What's going on, guys? Here for another SHOKY movie review. This time we're going to be doing Spider-Man No Way Home. But first I want to talk about Ghostbusters Afterlife some more. Just kidding. I'm not going to do that. I've done enough videos on that and people have been arguing with me constantly. Either way, Spider-Man No Way Home, saw it last night. Was way too busy to accomplish a review after the fact, so I'm doing it now today based on entirely memory of that incredibly long movie. I definitely failed in looking at how long the movie was before going to go see it. I saw it at 3:15 showtime, got out at like 6:10, I think, post credits and all that. First initial reaction, it was a good movie. It was. It was also a very sad movie. By the way, this is going to be a non-spoiler review. I'll do an entire spoiler review talking about the things that actually happened, all the things that people expected to happen, what did, what didn't happen, stuff like that. This is going to be more of a thoughts based on what happened, without giving anything away, and also just talking about characters and motivation and the storyline and stuff like that. So, basically, if you're following the history of the Spider-Man movies so far within the MCU, last go-round, we fought Mysterio without knowing it was Mysterio the whole time, and then at the very end, he comes out and tells the world who Spider-Man is, being Peter Parker. And that's the literal end of the last movie. And this movie picks up exactly at that spot. And basically, they're kind of borrowing from the comics where this sort of happened, where Peter really did have to try to make a deal to erase everyone's memory that he was Spider-Man. Because I believe that did happen. Not in this context, but it did happen. So they're borrowing that from the comics. And, of course, all of the hilarity that ensues with trying to rewrite the universe. But the funny thing is, like, because this is non-spoilerific, this is what happens in the trailer. He reaches out to Doctor Strange after a series of events. And he says, hey, I need you to erase everyone's memory that I'm Spider-Man. And he's like, okay, well, that means, nobody will remember who you are. Cool. And he goes, wait, nobody? Wait, what about MJ? MJ's got to know who I am. That was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And he's like, okay. He's like, so wait, no, and Ned, and then, and May too. May, he basically he didn't think it through like people normally don't. And because Strange is in, oddly, a hurry to get this done, instead of stopping the spell as initiated and just saying, done, we're not going to play with this game, he tried to rewrite the spell many times while doing it, and then ends up causing the whole movie to happen after this. As we know, we get through all the classic Spider-Man villains from the previous Spider-Man movies. We get Dr. Octopus, Green Goblin, Lizard, Sandman, and Electro. And I did, in a previous discussion with somebody, say that there was a sixth person that came through due to the trailer, but that was a thing they were trying to do to trick people. I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that point. So, technically speaking, there was not a Sinister Six in this movie. There's definitely 5. And yes, no spoilers, technically speaking, Venom did come through in this movie. Talk about more of that in the spoiler review. But basically, hilarity ensues. Peter now has to fight these enemies and basically try to deal with his life with everyone now knowing who Peter is as Spider-Man, and dealing with the fallout thereof, and then the surprising fallout of Stark Industries, and there's a lot of deep, heavy stuff that happens in this movie that if it really went the way it did, assuming no universal changes and any craziness that might come up in Multiverse of Madness, um, this movie does a lot to hurt, in my opinion, does a lot to hurt the legacy of Iron Man. And if you're keeping up with Hawkeye, um, that movie has really been about what does it even mean, or the show has been, what does it really even mean to be an Avenger? Like, why does that even matter? Why does somebody being called an Avenger really change everything? You know, and in this movie, it also really does matter to that degree too. They bring up the idea that, look, this is a post-snap world. This is a post all the crazy shit has happened. Aliens have attacked Earth repeatedly, and we had the Earth's mightiest heroes who actually did something, and then now we're many years beyond that. And what does it even mean for those heroes anymore? And part of that is covered in this, to a degree. The stresses of being a public superhero is basically all this is covered, and that's always been a mainstay of comic books and superhero things, where if everyone knows, or especially your enemies know your secret identity, they can now come at you from your family, they can come at you from people your job, everything like that, and that's really what this turns into. And the J. Jonah character in this movie, holy shit. I mean, like, it was one thing in the early Spider-Man movies, because it's J.K. Simmons reprising that role. He is like a downright bastard in this. Like, and it's funny because you actually see him go from a dude literally in his apartment with a green screen to a true, like, major news network type situation, peddling propaganda and anti-Spider-Man rhetoric and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy. And this also, they don't really bring real world politics into this, but they do bring fictional world politics that are very much reflected in the way things have happened in actual reality, where sides have been split and half the people believe one thing, the other half believe the other, and everything about it is like, I'm right, you're wrong, go to hell kind of situation. And that's part of the movie that gets a little intense. And the funny thing is about Spider-Man, and I don't know if this is, I guess it's probably true for most of these MCU movies, it's the hero not just saving the day because there's a bad guy and that's just what he's gonna do. It's usually the hero trying to fix a mistake that he made that has led to this situation, and Spider-Man is all about that. Because seemingly Spider-Man, with the exception of like at least his first villain with Green Goblin, basically created all of his foes for the most part. And we really, really get to see the fallout of this, because we get to see two different universes. I'm sorry, three different, technically two, universe bad guys come together all on the basis of their hatred of Spider-Man, under the guise that now this Peter Parker has to deal with what happened to these guys in their own universes. It's kind of crazy. And the movie really does stick with that, like, Spider-Man taking on responsibility, which that's his whole gig, right? With great power comes great responsibility, which, ever so tiny spoiler, that line literally finally comes up in this Spider-Verse, as it were. And that's a good thing. I mean, they finally actually outright said that. Early on in Civil War, he talked about how he didn't say that word for word. He said, look, when you can do the things that I do, and bad stuff happens and you don't do anything to help that, then, whatever. So he was alluding to that situation, but the actual phrase 100% comes out in this movie finally, um, delivered by someone unlikely. Um, so, and it's funny. There's a guy. I just thinking about this because obviously, Stan Lee is long since not with us now in the MCU. There's a guy that I swear would have been the Stan Lee cameo because there's a dude in the background. It's just like, who's that guy? It's like some older guy with like glasses and a mustache going on. I was like, is that just supposed to invoke the Stan Lee cameo that we can't have? Um, Also, there is a little bit, if I had to guess, there is a bit of crossover with this and Hawkeye, because the time frames end up lining up, and I think that we're going to start seeing, this is not a definitive statement, I think we're going to see a lot more movie interaction into the Disney Plus verse, as it were. We're already getting that in Hawkeye to begin with, now that we've got Yelena showing up in Hawkeye, so we know it is all the same group, but we generally don't get the actual events of a movie influencing this. There are there's some cameos that are important, some early on, some throughout the movie that are all very important cameos. And it really does mean a lot for the future of the MCU and Disney Plus and stuff like that, even regarding Spider-Man and stuff like that. So it should get very interesting in the future because of those things that went down. Now, I said I'm going to do a spoiler review later. I don't want... It is so hard. This movie is so difficult to talk about without doing any spoilers, because surprisingly, they did a decent job of hiding the things they wanted to hide. Like, the trailer, you see everything in the trailer as it is, essentially. There's only like one scene that I can think of from the trailer that is tweaked to hide stuff. I'll leave it at that. Everything else they just flat out don't address. Also, we get some character development for Ned, which was unexpected. They're just like, hey, Ned is... This is something about Ned. There's no way we ever would have known, and now we get to explore that, hopefully. In theory. And this was a very long movie, guys. It really, really was. I mean, you get a whole section that is basically, if I break it down, the first chunk of the movie is directly responding to the effects of Mysterio's message. You have to have them dealing with that. Then you have him dealing with Doctor Strange. Then as a direct offshoot of that, dealing with the Sinister Five. And then from there, it's how do we clean up this mess? And like the whole back third of this movie is how do we clean up this mess? And it's a pretty, I don't want to say convoluted. There's a tiny bit of convolution, but they really can. They explain the way they get out of it because of, well, Spider-Man being Spider-Man. And several parts of this movie definitely really teared up. They did a good job with most of the characters, I would say. I think that between Green Goblin and Doc Ock, those are the two best villain characters that they remotely explored. Sandman was okay, but it's just, the funny thing is I think that, I forgot the name of the actor that plays him, like, it's so funny that he basically spends the entire movie in CG. Like, it's just like, it just could basically voice act his way completely through the movie. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be on camera. It's pretty funny. One thing I thought was interesting about this, because we do get Norman Osborn in this, and we deal with some, because now you've got villains from different universes talking to each other and about their own experiences and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting that we don't have, so far in the main MCU universe, we don't have a Norman Osborn, we don't have a Harry Osborn, so maybe in the future we'll get that, like, because Oscorp doesn't exist as far as we've seen, does not exist at all. um, but you actually kind of get the ramifications, so to speak, of Norman Osborn's thing, and then even they sort of get. I guess what I'm getting at is, like, there's no Harry Osborn in this, like, period. Like, there's no Harry Osborn, and it feels weird to be lacking that character in a Spider-Man universe. And I guess with Ned making up that new friendship and stuff like that, it's a little bit different. Not having a Green Goblin in this universe, not having a Doc Ock in this universe, all really does lend to the idea that Spider-Man in and of himself has not had his own villains to fight, with the exception of Vulture and Mysterio. He's usually just and basically both of those were Iron Man villains. Vulture exists because of Iron Man. Same for what's his face that I just said. Both exist because of Iron Man, and the responsibility of Spider-Man to now deal with that fallout. That's the whole thing. It's almost like the last few years of Tony's life, at least prior to Endgame, seems like Peter was having to clean up those last few mistakes, realistically, to make that happen, especially with Mysterio and that. And the fallout of everything that happened with Mysterio, like, what's really crazy is that they actually really dive into this world really thinking that Mysterio was truly a superhero and Spider-Man really did kill him. It's really kind of disturbing. It's like, for somebody who technically didn't do anything but put on a really, really good show, Mysterio had a real impact in this universe. And several things come back up, such as damage control, which was originally set up by Stark to fix things after an Avengers battle or anything else like that that's usually on them. Damage control has now basically become a wing of the government instead of a private organization. And wow, what they started doing. And what I really find it funny, they're called the DODC now, and so, I mean, they're kind of really, the department. We already have a very similar acronym in the real world. They start doing some stuff in this movie that is like, okay. Also, they completely address something from the last movie, which I thought was interesting. A misunderstanding of Peter's. They directly address it on screen, and you go, wait, what? Even he goes, wait, what? So that's always good. We do get to see many new. I say many. Realistically, hold on. How many outfits did Peter technically have in this? So I will say the toys are misleading when it comes to the Spider-Man outfits, but also there's a weird. I'm not sure. There's something they didn't explain very well at all in this movie, and that's the change between the spider suits. This is me going into criticism of it, really. So, at the beginning, he's in the red and black suit that he had at the end of the last movie, So he's fixed it up after the battle with Mysterio. He's swinging around with MJ. God, I don't like calling her MJ. It's really annoying, honestly. Oh, by the way, they add in a handy-dandy last name for her to just make things more annoying, and I think that was a retcon. I've called bullshit on it. That's a criticism for me. It's not right in this universe to do that, I don't think. Anyways, so spider suits, we get the red and the black one as usual, and he still has the Iron Spider, so he pulls out the Iron Spider later on because it's just easier. Though technically speaking, they're all nano suits for the most part. but they're not, which is really strange. So it seems like he has the regular suit on, and then he also has the nano suit, because it seems like it just comes up when necessary, just like all the other Iron Man suits at the very end, where they just, just pop on and he's good. But there's a point where his main suit gets wrecked for a reason, and he has to default to the Iron Spider, I guess. That gets ever so slightly damaged, which you actually see in the trailer, so that's not really given away. So it gets damaged while fighting Doc Ock, which ends up playing beautifully into the rest of the movie. That is all handled very well. It's not forgotten, and it's dealt with through the thing, and that's actually very well done. The problem comes whenever you get to what looks to be this crazy black and gold suit that he's using to go hunt down some of the guys. You see it in the trailer, you see it in the toys, and he's got like the magic symbols and stuff like that. That is a super problematic suit because it looks to just be a bare version of his actual suit. Like the red and the black suit has an outer fabric layer, and it looks like all he does is remove that. Or it's the nano suit with less armor on top. Because once you really get a chance to look at it, all it is the black is like a base, like carbon fiber layer almost. And then the gold is the webbing inlaid, but then you look closer and there's wires coming off of it. Like it's the wires underneath the suit. And the only thing that is changed is a gauntlet that he gets from Strange. That's where the magic stuff comes from. But if you look at the toys, it's got like a whole like magic symbol on the chest. It's got other kinds of stuff. It's got him doing things. The whole purpose of that suit is it's the backup to the backup so that he can still go Spider-Man. But he's only, at this particular junction, he has two suits. He's got the nano suit and he's got the red and the black. The red and the black is out of commission technically, and he's lost a good chunk of the nano suit. So, if anything, this is the red and the black that has been basically skinned. And then when he comes back from this battle, it is magically repaired, so to speak. Not literal. It is repaired in dialogue, at very least. And then he, very shortly thereafter, gets the rest of his nanobots back, adding the gold inlay back to his suit, and that ends up staying on the suit for the rest of the movie, I think, at least up until a very important part. And then I think he switches back to the red and the black. And so that's where it really starts getting very janky, because if you recall, all the way back in Infinity War, he was in his red and blue that Tony made for him, the really high-tech red and blue suit with suit lady in his head. And I forgot what he named her. Either with Karen, I think, actually. Which might be why they got rid of Karen later on. But the Iron Spider suit ends up taking over that, and it just becomes the bare minimum suit as it is. It's no longer a suit he has to actively put on. Just the nanites now do their thing. Okay? But then when he couldn't use that suit and he had to default back to his red and blue in the last movie, that got wrecked or left behind or destroyed. I forgot exactly what happened there. He had the Night Monkey suit, which is still hilarious. Then he gets the red and black suit from the thing in the jet, which gets blown up. So we can't get another new suit that way. Almost all Stark tech is now locked away, and Tony is obviously not around anymore to be making any cool shit like that. So we get to a point where either something happens off screen Actually, a lot of things happen off screen. Or they're flubbing which suit is which, or they're the same suit, just with one is the normal take off and on suit, and the other one is the nanite suit that can transform into other things. It's kind of confusing when it comes down to those things. The other thing is, I would say that some of the voice acting for the more CG characters kind of sketchy at the beginning. I don't know if it's bad or the audio was weird in the theater, or the acting itself was bad, or they were playing it up because they were going with how bad it was initially. The changes made to the characters, the villains, that is, all make sense. They're all explained real world. There's one that is mostly useless, if I'm honest. It was just there for the street cred, I guess. But pretty much useless. Gotta think about that one. Yep, pretty useless. Honestly, J. Jonah is the worst villain he has to fight. Well, he doesn't even fight them. It's like, that's the biggest problem. He doesn't get to fight J. Jonah. He just deals with it. If I were Peter, I'd have sued the shit out of him for libel and slander, because it's both spoken and written. I'm trying to think if there's anything else before I get to the spoiler review, which is really going to be a big deal. So spoiler review will be up for members first, and then I'll make it public later. But for the most part, this does a good job of continuing the Spider-Man legacy, setting up Multiverse of Madness, setting up other things to come, and oh yeah, I forgot about that. So yeah, one character completely, just kind of in the spoilers. I'll talk about that. But yeah, so guys, if you want to see those things early, if you want to see spoiler talk, or you want to see any of the other things, like when I do out the boxes, behind the scenes stuff, or flat out reviews and other things like that I'll be doing just for members, join the membership. It really will help out the channel. Right now, views are down, and this is the best part of the year to make money, and well, it sucks. So help out the channel. Not much, $2.99 a month. You get some cool stuff. It is what it is. So, but I'll catch you guys on the actual spoilerific review here in a bit. And let me know what you think down below. Please do not put any spoilers down in the comments. Just be polite for that. Talk about your feelings on the movie. Like I said, I left pretty sad. It felt good, but very sad at the end. Also, it started storming at the perfect part of the movie for it to technically be storming in the movie, so nobody knew if that was real or in the movie. So that was actually a pretty funny experience. So, but I'll catch you guys next time. Remember, as always, keep on swinging.